Good early afternoon, everyone. It's around 29 degrees, so it's even warmer than yesterday, and sunny and benign. It looks like we're going to get a bit more sunny weather coming up too in the next 5 days. So excellent time of the year to be here. It's just a pity more of you can't come up here at this stage. But anyway, as usual, there's a stack of news. As usual, it pertains to Victoria, and I'm very sorry about that. I think people are getting a little bored with this because my number of viewers has actually dropped off a little bit, and I can understand that, but this hasn't played out totally yet, and I'll just cover up a couple of these stories, try to get through them fairly quickly and get you guys up to speed with what's happening there. The good news is I think there's a bit of blowback for some of these latest reforms. Well, reforms in inverted commas, extra emergency powers from Daniel Andrews. I think that finally the politicians in Victoria have had enough of his extension of powers and are starting to rein him in. So that's very good news, because if they hadn't stopped, well, I don't think Andrews would stop. I think he's a man on a mission to basically become like a banana republic dictator. But anyway, I'll get into the actual news items now. I'm going to do it on the tablet because my writing is absolutely abysmal. So the terrifying police state Daniel Andrews wants to create, how innocent Victorians can be arrested and detained indefinitely without evidence on the word of a power-hungry public servant. So that's frightening to anybody, to think that public servants can just basically act like police. So that is not a good look. Top lawyers have slammed the plan to let public servants make arrests. They would be able to arrest people if they think they might spread COVID-19. Lawyers have warned that officials may get power hungry and abuse powers. There are fears people could be indefinitely detained with no access to justice. And this is real police state stuff. So thank God that there's some politicians in Victoria finally waking up. Innocent Victorians could be arrested in the street or at work and detained indefinitely by power-crazed officials. Under the new law Daniel Andrews wants to pass, top lawyers have warned. The proposed new law, which will be debated in the Victorian Parliament next month, would allow government to give anyone it chooses, such as public servants, the power to enforce coronavirus restrictions and make arrests. The unprecedented plan would also allow officials to detain people they suspect may spread coronavirus, even if they have done nothing wrong. 18 esteemed former judges and lawyers have written an open letter warning that the law is unprecedented, excessive and open to abuse. One of those lawyers, Ross Gillies QC, told Daily Mail Australia he fears power-hungry officials who enjoy exerting authority may abuse powers given to them. Well, no great surprise to me. The last people I want to be giving extra power to are power-crazed public servants and union officials. And that seems to be what Dan's intention is, which is an absolute dystopian nightmare in my opinion. Some people are excited by power and the ability to exert authority over someone else. There is the potential for enormous injustice. Someone might grab someone and say, I have reason to believe you are a COVID carrier or know someone who has COVID and I apprehend you. There would be no remedy in that situation. That may be the worst case scenario, but we know that can happen. Well, we've seen what the police are doing with their current laws, so of course it can happen. Mr. Gillies described the law, which has passed the lower house, as draconian and urged the upper house to vote it down or amend it next month. It sort of does make a fair case for bicameral parliaments. In other words, having two houses of parliament in one state. In Queensland, we don't have that. We just got the one parliament. Now, maybe in a case like this, that's not such a great idea. Peters QC, who also signed the letter, expressed similar concerns. Power is very intoxicating and only some people can exercise it carefully, such as very well-trained groups, he told Daily Mail Australia. Asked if the new law could see innocent Victorians being arrested in the street, he said, that's right, that's a very big risk. Mr. Peters said normally when someone is arrested, they are brought before the bail justice, but the proposed law does not say that would happen. Asked if it would allow officials to indefinitely detain people under state of emergency powers, he said, it could be read that way, yes. Now, this is frightening stuff. He also said it was unclear what redress people who were wrongly arrested would have. We have a traditional understanding of police power, and redress is to the courts if you have concerns about powers are exercised, he said. But how are you able to effectively test the belief upon which you were restrained? You might not find out about it, why you were arrested, until you get to court. We flagged that there could be legal challenges to the law process, saying when excessive powers are legislated, there is often a legal challenge. Asked if all 18 signatories to the letter would launch legal action together, he said, I can't speak for everyone, I can only speak for myself. The proposed law does not specify who will be authorised to make arrests. We just don't know. That's one of the devices. They could be anybody, he says. It's not enough to say the problem can be managed without specifying who would be given the powers. They said the bill would allow anyone to be authorised to exercise emergency powers. There would be no requirement that persons authorised by police officers or even public servants, the letter said. Allowing citizens to make arrests on the basis of a belief that the detained person is unlikely to comply with emergency directions is unprecedented, excessive and open to abuse. Gideon Rosner, Director of Policy of free market think tank, the Institute of Public Affairs, told Daily Mail Australia that legislation was extremely dangerous and would create the Daniel Andrews Stasi. And I tend to agree. Daniel Andrews has shown very little restraint in this. He's shown a lust for power, and he's a dangerous man in my opinion. And with having someone weak like Scott Morrison, who was potentially there to oppose him and pull him into line, without having that strong force, he's basically now gone basically troppo from what I can see. More on Daniel Andrews and his wonderful band of ministers. Calls for Daniel Andrews to sack his clueless health minister for her breathtakingly incompetent handling of Victoria's coronavirus crisis. Our Premier is warned his most powerful allies will soon abandon him. Daniel Andrews has been urged to sack his clueless health minister, Jenny Mikakis, must go, according to Health Workers Union boss Diane Asma. Ms. Asma claims Ms. Mikakis has not once displayed a basic understanding. Jenny Mikakis has escaped relatively unscathed from the mounting public backlash against the Andrews government until now. But on Wednesday night, Health Workers Union boss Diane Asma insisted Mr. Andrews has no choice but to demand her resignation over the state's crisis and her breathtaking incompetence. Yeah, it's pretty damning. Health Workers Union boss Diana Asma insisted Mr. Andrews has no choice but to demand her resignation over the state's crisis. An inquiry is now underway into the failures of the mandatory hotel quarantine system and whether the government could have done anything differently to avoid the outbreak. I think it's blindingly obvious they could. For the good of your government, for the good of health workers I represent, and for the good of all Victorians, Miss Mikakis must go. Miss Asma wrote in a letter to Mr. Andrews. Miss Asma said that throughout the pandemic, not once has she displayed even a basic understanding of her portfolio. Phew, tell us what you really think, Diana. According to the letter, Miss Mikakis was warned further deaths in aged care homes were imminent given the lack of supplies, and added that the 16,000 strong union would not support Labor at the next election. Pow! Wow! Well, is this the beginning of the end for Daniel Andrews? Once the union started abandoning him, he's in real strife. This is entirely about Miss Mikakis, competence as your health minister, which is at the heart of the government's response to the current pandemic, she said. Miss Asma warned all Victorians are now paying the price for Miss Mikakis' utterly dysfunctional incompetence. Mr. Andrews is yet to publicly address the letter. He let it slip that Victoria's restrictions could be eased even quicker than set out on the nation's roadmap to recovery. I wouldn't believe a word that Andrews says when he's talking about easing restrictions. He seems to enjoy toying with the Victorian public and raising their expectations, then dashing them. He's a sick individual from what I can tell. Okay, now we're on to the letters that condemn Daniel Andrews. Bombshell messages reveal the PM begged the Premier to let soldiers man quarantine hotels 3 times as fiasco sparked Australia's second wave. PM urged Daniel Andrews to accept 1,000 ADF crew during coronavirus crisis. Letters written as Victoria's second horror coronavirus wave began to worsen comes after Victoria requested 850 ADF troops in late June but withdrew offer. Scott Morrison personally wrote to Daniel Andrews 3 times urging the Premier to accept 1,000 Defence Force troops to help the states fight against coronavirus, bombshell letters have revealed. Details of the strongly worded letter obtained by Sky News through Freedom of Information laws were revealed on Wednesday night. They were written by the Prime Minister as Victoria's second coronavirus wave that would later send the state back into lockdown began to spiral out of control. Morrison first wrote to the Premier on July 4th. Prime Minister Scott Morrison urged the Victorian Premier to accept 1,000 Australian Defence Force troops to help the states fight with coronavirus. Bitchute are ADF troops and police patrolling Melbourne during the second wave of the crisis. I recognise the new measures and support the significant efforts underway. The Commonwealth stands ready to provide any support needed on top of existing measures in place, including the Australian Defence Force to support planning and logistics and Commonwealth staff to support clinical efforts, community engagement and contact tracing. He added ADF personnel could also help with patrolling affected suburbs already in lockdown and residents do not travel outside from hotspot zones. As we have seen with previous outbreaks in northwest Tasmania and Sydney, these types of outbreaks can quickly overwhelm local health systems. I reaffirm the offer of Commonwealth for on-the-ground support and help in coordinating support from other states while acknowledging Victoria's leadership, he continued. Victoria's leadership? What the hell is he talking about? Why is he kissing Andrew's ass and begging him? I mean, I find this really worrying that Morrison is been taking a servile type of attitude towards the state premiers and they've been riding roughshod over him. This is the major problem, in my opinion, that we have a weak Prime Minister who has set up this national cabinet, which has been an absolute shambles from what I can gather. All it's led to is now we've got a recalcitrant Western Australian Premier who's just telling us to stuff off and running their own show. We've got Anastasia Palaszczuk, but all she's doing is trying to manipulate the result in the next election. Doesn't really give a crap about what's happening with Corona from what I can gather. It's all about politics. And then you've got Daniel Andrews, you've got Mad Dan Andrews, who wants to set up some pseudo Chinese outpost province where he rules like a mandarin in the Chinese Empire with his Belt and Road project going ahead. I mean, it's just an absolute shambles. And if Morrison had a scintilla of testosterone, he would have, but he clamped down on them. And he could do it with the big stick, which is GST revenue. If he cut off the revenue flows to these states, they'd have to basically buckle. But he hadn't got the balls to do it. He just hasn't. He's just basically wussed out. I've got a lot of criticisms of Scott Morrison, I've got to say, and that's to do with a few of his policy decisions too. The Snowy Point 2.0, which is an absolute shambles that Turnbull handed him, and he's going ahead with it, even though engineers have said that it's a crock of you-know-what. It's going to cost, I think there's been about a 100% blowout in costs for it, and it's a damn inefficient way of getting power. But he's going ahead with it anyway. And he's going ahead with that dodgy sub project where these subs are actually designed to be nuclear, which would be much more capable. And we're paying through the nose to have them downgraded to diesel electric. Not even the cutting edge diesel electric using the latest in battery technology. We're using bloody the old type of batteries. It's just an absolute disgrace. The only tick I would give them is on the reforms they've made to tertiary education, where they've made humanities and social science subjects more expensive and reduce the cost of STEM subjects, so science, maths, and the like, engineering, and all those subjects. I think that's a really good move, but that's about the only positive thing I've seen. The latest effort from Morrison is to actually promote gas ahead of coal. He seems to be anti-coal again. So that's not good, and for no rational reason. We're making a stack of money exporting coal to other countries, but we won't use it ourselves. I mean, how bloody stupid are we? Really are. I mean, pathetic. So look, that's the news for today. I'm sorry I've loaded up on Morrison, but I'm pretty fed up with him. I think he hasn't got much imagination, and The only thing he did well was he actually spoke well early on in the coronavirus. The wording of his edicts were good, but the outcome has not been good. And I'm noticing that his popularity is starting to slide, and it could go down to the depths he had just prior to to this virus breaking out, just after the bushfires, when he was basically persona non grata. And he needs to really he needs to get some advice. The trouble with Morrison is he listens to these public servants. He doesn't actually have any ideas of his own, from what I can gather. And we need people with a broader idea of the future for Australia. People like the Hawke Keating government had that vision, and so did the Howard and Costello governments. But they're the exceptions rather than the rules. Unfortunately, we need more governments with vision long term for this country. We need to make some fundamental changes to increase the prosperity of this country, and that's not happening from what I can see. So look, that's about it for today. Sorry to be a bit of a downer with the end of that, but if you could please give me thumbs up, thumbs down, comment, and subscribe, that would be great. I didn't get that many people viewing the last video. Maybe people are getting a bit sick of the stuff with Daniel Andrews. I will actually have a comment about Elon Musk's battery day. It was a fairly big announcement. I've got a few opinions on that, a bit different to what most commentators are saying. But there is some good news that at least the Victorian Parliament, the upper house that is going to block this madness that he's trying to come forward with. So that is good news. So we'll cling to that, I guess. And as I say, it's beautiful weather here. I hope the weather isn't too bad where you are and that you're doing okay. My crazy neighbour was noisy the previous night to this, and she was quiet last night, so that was good. So count your blessings when you can get them. So have a great day. Look after yourself, stay safe, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.